The gavel fell right before the final ruling, and the entire courtroom fell silent. My 12-year-old granddaughter raised her hand and said to the judge, "Your Honor, may I show you something my grandfather doesn't know I have?" When she displayed the evidence she had collected, every lawyer, clerk, and attendee in the room froze. My name is David Miller. I am 67 years old. I am a retired police chief, and I live in Austin, Texas. What I am about to tell you is the story of how I discovered that my entire life had been a professionally engineered lie, and how my own granddaughter, Piper, saved me from total financial and legal ruin. If you have ever faced a shocking betrayal that made you question everything, hit that like button to cheer up this old chief. Subscribe to the Retired Chief's Files channel right now so you don't miss the next stories I share with all my heart. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching this video from, and what time is it there? Have you ever felt compelled to speak up for someone you love, even when it put you at risk? I love hearing from every corner of this country and knowing when you join me. When I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, my father always used to tell me, "David, you trust too much, son. Not everyone has a clean badge like yours." I grew up hearing that, but I never fully believed it. I always thought if you treat people with respect and honesty, they will do the same for you. How naive I was. I met my wife Alice when I was a young police officer. She was a beautiful, driven woman who came from a respectable family and had aspirations in real estate. We courted for 3 years before getting married, maintaining the respect and traditions of that era. I worked my way up the ranks with my own hands. Every promotion, every successful case closure, every dangerous shift was for her. I worked double shifts and holidays for over 40 years, always thinking of giving her the best. We had one amazing son, Robert, who is now a successful prosecutor, and he gave me 2 wonderful grandchildren, Piper and little Chloe. But about a year ago, my granddaughter Piper, who is 13 years old, came into my study after school with a strange look on her face. She spent a few minutes fidgeting with her tablet, avoiding my eyes, until she asked, "Grandpa, can I ask you a question?" "Sure, sweetheart. What is it?" "Do you trust Grandma Alice a lot?" The question felt oddly specific and made me pause, but I responded, "Of course, Piper. We have been married for over 40 years. Why do you ask?" She stayed quiet for a long moment, then said, It's nothing, Grandpa. Just curiosity." But I saw something very wrong in her eyes, something that would change my life forever. I was born right here in Austin, in a simple house near the old Congress Avenue Bridge. My father was a hard-working man who started a small security company, and my mother was a secretary. We didn't have much, but there was always integrity and love in our home. I remember the smell of my mother's famous pecan pie she made every Sunday, and the sound of the traffic coming off the highway early in the morning. From a young age, I was good with people. My father always said, "This boy is going to be a man of order, mark my words." When I was a boy, I spent hours building model police cars and listening to police scanners. The neighbors always complimented my focus. They said I had a special way of commanding respect. At school, I was a regular student. I wasn't the smartest, but I wasn't a troublemaker. What I loved were the civic classes and the law enforcement club. That's where I felt I belonged. It was in those classes that I met Mike, who later became my best friend and my partner on the force. He lived across town in a family that was much wealthier. His dad was a successful attorney, and they had a more comfortable life than us. But Mike was never snobby. He was always decent to me. We got along great because we both liked the same things. Watching the Cowboys game on Sundays, fishing on Lake Travis, and mainly the idea of serving the community. We spent our weekends working security details for Mike's dad's firm, learning the value of observation and discipline. When I finished college, Mike's father helped me secure a scholarship to the police academy. That's how I started my professional life. I showed up early, worked hard, and was always eager to learn. The chief liked me because I was dedicated and honest. It was a good time here in Austin. The city was growing, crime was manageable, and community policing was highly regarded. I specialized in major investigations and corporate fraud cases. I was proud of my career. It was during that time that I first saw Alice. She had come to the precinct to report a minor theft. A beautiful woman, always impeccably dressed, with a delicate way of speaking. When she passed by the desk, I pretended I was concentrated on my paperwork. But I watched her out of the corner of my eye. She was the only daughter of a respected local banker. Her father was known for being fair in business. Alice had studied business administration, rare for a woman at the time. She knew how to manage accounts and write professional letters, all the high-level business things. I, who was just a street cop starting out, felt slightly out of my depth near her, but Mike always encouraged me. "Chief, you're hardworking, honest, you have a future. Why don't you try talking to her?" It took me months to muster the courage. Until one day, she came to the precinct to ask for advice on a property dispute. It was there, discussing legal matters, that I felt more comfortable talking. "Does the lady understand much about property law?" I asked, a little sheepishly. "A little," she replied with a small, captivating smile. "My father always said quality investments are key to a stable life." We talked about investments, the market, and I discovered that she was a genuine person, despite her privileged upbringing. In the end, when I offered the legal resources for her dispute, she said, "That was very helpful, David. You really have integrity." I left there on cloud 9. It was the first time a woman like her had said my name in such a warm, respectful way. But if I had known what I would discover about that woman decades later, I would never have approached her. I would never have built my entire life on a lie that was just beginning. After that day at the precinct, I started finding excuses to run into her. Sometimes it was to follow up on her case, other times to ask about a business contact. Any reason was good enough to exchange a few words with Alice. She always greeted me politely, but I figured it was just courtesy. A woman from a family like hers, the banker's daughter, wouldn't be interested in a simple police officer like me. Or so I thought. One day, during a bad thunderstorm, she had to stay late at the office, finishing some papers. When she left, the weather was terrible outside. I was still organizing my patrol vehicle when I saw her standing at the entrance, watching the rain. "Alice, didn't you bring an umbrella?" I asked. "No, I forgot it at home. I'll have to wait for it to stop." Without thinking twice, I offered, "I can drive you. I have the patrol car, and it's right outside." She hesitated slightly, but finally accepted. During the drive to her house, we talked about everything. Austin, her plans for the future, my dreams of becoming a police chief someday. That night, I discovered that behind that facade of a rich girl, she was a down-to-earth person. She liked listening to jazz, doing puzzles, and tending to her mother's rose garden. She dreamed of having a family, a house with a big yard for a dog. From that night on, our friendship grew closer. She started seeking conversation with me, asking about my job, showing genuine interest. I fell head over heels in love with her. Our courtship began a few months later. Her father was a bit suspicious at first. Natural, right? His only daughter dating an officer. But Alice insisted. She said I was a good man, hard-working, and had a future. I remember her often saying, "David, you're different from the other guys. You have character, you have honesty, That's worth more than any money. We courted honestly for 3 straight years. I worked double shifts to save money so I could propose marriage. Every weekend, we went to church together. Afterward, we walked downtown. She loved watching the street performers near the Capitol building. When I finally gathered the courage to ask her father for her hand, he looked me in the eyes and said, "David, will you take good care of my daughter?" "With my own life, sir. You can be sure of that." "Then it's settled. You have my blessing." We got married in a simple ceremony in a small church outside of Austin. Alice was beautiful in her white dress, smiling brighter than I had ever seen her smile. My mother cried through the whole Mass with emotion. My father said he was proud of the man I had become. Our honeymoon was a long weekend in San Antonio. Only 3 days, because I couldn't be away from work too long. But they were the happiest days of my life. We walked hand in hand on the Riverwalk, dreaming about the future, making plans. "I want 3 children," she confided one night, lying on my chest. "2 boys and a girl. We will have whatever God wants to give us," I replied, kissing her forehead. We started our married life in a rented apartment near downtown. It was small but cozy. Alice put up colorful curtains, planted flowers on the little balcony, and left her personal touch everywhere. I came home from work and always found a hot meal ready, the house clean and smelling good. The first few years were full of love and harmony. Alice got pregnant soon after, and our first son, Robert, was born. 2 years later, our daughter Marcia arrived. I worked harder and harder, determined to give my family the best life possible. I bought a small plot of land in a growing suburb and started building our own house. Every evening, after work, I would go there to lay some bricks and mix some cement. Alice sometimes brought a sandwich and stayed to keep me company. "You're killing yourself working, David," she would say, concerned. "It's for you, my love. I want our children to have a real home, not a rented one." She would hug me and whisper, "I have the best husband in the world." It took me 5 years to finish the house. When we moved in, it was a celebration. Neighbors came to visit. They praised every detail. Alice was radiant, showing off the furniture I had custom built, the living room table, the bedroom dresser, the kids' cribs. It was the happiest time of our lives, or so I thought. Because I never imagined that inside the woman I loved so much, the one who treated me with such affection, who told me she loved me every day, was a person I never knew existed. A person capable of betrayals I would only discover decades later, when it would almost be too late. The years passed in a blur. Robert and Marcia grew up playing in our yard, climbing the trees I planted, helping Alice in the small vegetable garden. I felt enormous pride watching my children run around the house I built with my own hands, playing with the wooden toys I made in my spare time. My career was going very well. With Austin's growth, there were always new security and investigation contracts. I was promoted to captain and then deputy chief. I hired 2 trusted deputies, Joaquin and Adamir, reliable men who helped me keep up with the demands. Alice continued to be an exemplary wife. She woke up early to make my coffee. My clothes were always washed and ironed. She cared for the children with affection. Every Sunday after church, we had those family dinners that only someone in Texas knows how to make. Perfectly smoked brisket, hearty chili, and chicken fried steak she learned from a neighbor. Sunday afternoons were sacred. While I listened to the football game on the radio, she stayed on the porch doing puzzles, watching the kids play outside. It was a simple life, but full of love and peace. Robert showed himself to be an intelligent child, always curious, asking questions about everything. Marcia took after her mother, delicate and focused. She liked helping in the kitchen and playing with her dolls. I dreamed of handing the family security business I planned to start over to Robert when he grew up, if he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to investigate crimes like you," he told me once when he was about 8 years old. "Then come here and I'll teach you how to use the forensics kit," I replied, filled with pride. Alice worried. "David, he's still too little for that heavy equipment." "Sweetheart, I started learning to observe at that age. You have to start practicing early." She smiled that affectionate smile of hers. "You're right. Our son is going to be a better chief than his dad." Those were golden times. We had achieved good financial stability. The house was paid for, the children growing up healthy. On summer nights, after the children went to sleep, Alice and I would sit talking on the porch, planning the future. "David, do you think we could add a room to the house?" "Who knows, maybe another baby is coming," she would say with that mischievous look. "Of course, my love. You want another child?" "I do. Our family isn't complete yet." And so came another baby, Julian, our Benjamin, a bright, lively child who completed our happiness. With 3 children, the house got louder, messier, but also happier. Alice managed to take care of everything. Even with so much work, she never complained, always with a smile on her face. The neighbors always complimented her. "Alice is so lucky, David. A hard-working husband, well-behaved kids, a beautiful home." I felt truly blessed. I had a beautiful family, a job that fulfilled me, the house of my dreams. What more could a man ask for? When Robert turned 15, he started helping me at the precinct during school breaks. He was a dedicated young man, a fast learner, with a knack for the legal side of things. Marcia became interested in teaching. And Julian, still small, already showed himself to be a little devilish, but with a good heart. "Our children are growing up to be good people," Alice commented proudly. "That's your merit, sweetheart. You knew how to raise them properly." "Our merit, David. Both of us together." During all that time, it never occurred to me to suspect anything. Alice was the perfect wife, affectionate, dedicated, faithful. When I came home tired from work, she gave me massages on my sore back. When I got sick, she cared for me like a child. On my birthdays, she always made my favorite chocolate cake with peanut butter frosting. Her only outings were for church, for the Tuesday evening book club, and occasionally to visit a friend in the neighborhood. An orderly life, no mysteries, no secrets, or so I thought. I remember a conversation we had when we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. We were celebrating at a fancy restaurant downtown, just the 2 of us, while Marcia watched Julian at home. "David, are you happy with me?" she asked, taking my hand. "Happy, Alice? You are the best thing that ever happened to me. If I had to choose again, I would choose you 1,000 times." She started to cry. At the moment, I thought it was sweet emotion, nostalgia for our dating days. How naive I was. "I love you so much too, David. You are a special man." We toasted with wine and made plans for the next 25 years. We wanted to meet our grandchildren, travel a little, maybe buy a small vacation condo in Florida for when we retired. "We're going to grow old together," she said, smiling. "Until death do us part," I replied, repeating what we said at the altar. What an irony of fate. If I had known that at that exact moment, she already had very different plans for our future, plans that involved my financial and legal ruin, I would never have made that toast. I would never have trusted so much in a person who, behind that angelic smile, hid a heart cold as ice. The years continued to pass, and our life continued in that good, quiet routine. Robert married a wonderful woman, Claudia, and gave me two beautiful grandchildren, Piper and little Chloe. Marcia also got married and moved to Dallas with her husband, but always came to visit on weekends with her kids. Julian, our Benjamin, finished his degree in business administration and took over the administrative side of the private security firm I had started, which was already quite large. I retired at 65, but I continued going to the firm almost every day. I couldn't stand being idle at home. Alice complained, "David, you retired to rest, not to work for free." But I liked being there, seeing the activity, teaching the newer agents. Life was too good to be true, and it truly was. Piper, my oldest granddaughter, was always an observant child. From a young age, she noticed everything, asked intelligent questions, and had a natural curiosity that reminded me a lot of Robert when he was a boy. She spent her afternoons with me in my study after school, helping me organize files, learning the name of every piece of vintage police equipment. "Grandpa, why is this old radio more valuable than that new tablet?" she would ask, touching my antique communication gear. "Because this one survived time and served a purpose, Piper. It is history, superior quality." "And how do you know if a person is trustworthy just by looking at them?" I patiently explained, teaching her to observe body language, to identify subtle inconsistencies. It was an enormous pleasure to see that child interested in my life's work, my passion. But it was about a year ago that I started noticing strange changes in Piper's behavior when she was near Alice. Before, she always ran to hug her grandmother when she arrived home. Now, she was somewhat distant, polite, but cool. I thought it was the phase of adolescence, a normal thing for a 13-year-old. One day, she came to talk to me in the study with a very serious look. "Grandpa, can I ask you something?" "Of course, my granddaughter." "What's up?" "Do you trust Grandma Alice a lot?" That question coming from a child felt strange. "Of course, Piper. We have been married for over 40 years. "Why do you ask me that?" She stayed quiet for a while, nervously playing with her tablet. Then she said, "Oh, it's nothing, Grandpa. Just curiosity." But I saw something very wrong in her eyes. That was not the manner of a child asking out of curiosity. It was the manner of someone who knew something serious and didn't know how to tell it. I started paying more attention to things. At first, I didn't notice anything strange. Alice was still the same, affectionate with me, careful with the house, always worried that I was eating well, that I wasn't cold. At 69, she was still a beautiful, well-preserved woman who drew attention in the street. But some small things started to bother me. She, who was never very interested in her phone, suddenly was glued to the device. She said it was to chat with friends from her book club, to see the grandchildren's photos that Marcia sent from Dallas. "Alice, you're very attached to that phone, aren't you?" "David, nowadays even old folks have to keep up with technology. I don't want to be left behind, right?" It made sense. I myself was learning to use the computer to help Julian with inventory control at the security firm. Another detail that started to catch my attention: she was more vain, buying new creams, coloring her hair more frequently, choosing more modern clothes when she went out. When I commented, she laughed. "David, just because we're getting older doesn't mean we have to neglect ourselves, right? I want to look nice so you can still feel proud of having a beautiful wife." And again, it made perfect sense. I even liked seeing her more animated, taking better care of herself. Her outings also increased slightly. In addition to the Tuesday book club, she started participating in a community finance seminar on Saturdays. "Mrs. Evans invited me, David. She says I have a good head for high-level finance. What's wrong with that?" Nothing wrong, really. Alice had always liked to be ambitious. It was natural that she would want to participate in high-level community activities. But what truly made me suspicious was Piper's behavior. She started avoiding being alone with her grandmother. When I left for a commitment and left her at home with Alice, she always managed to leave soon after. "Piper, aren't you going to stay and eat with Grandma today?" "No, Grandpa. My mom asked me to come back early. I have a lot of homework." Or, "My friends called me to play basketball at the park. Can I go, Grandpa?" Once I asked Claudia if everything was okay with the child. She looked uncomfortable. "Dad, Piper has been a little strange, honestly. The other day I asked her if she wanted to sleep at your house this weekend. And she made up an excuse. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it well. She, who always adored staying with you, now seems to be avoiding it. Adolescence is a difficult stage, isn't it?" I thought it was just that. A 13-year-old is at that age where they prefer friends to grandparents. A natural thing. Until one Thursday afternoon, something happened that left me deeply suspicious. I had gone to the doctor for some routine checkups. Nothing serious. Just the checkup that men our age have to do every year. When I was returning home, I remembered that I had forgotten to pick up my blood pressure medication at the pharmacy. I went back, picked up the medicine, bought some chocolate bars that I like, and decided to stop at the grocery store for some coffee creamers for the afternoon coffee. When I was arriving at my street, I saw a black sedan parked right in front of my house, a model I didn't recognize. I thought it might be a visitor for Alice, maybe a new friend from the finance seminar. I entered through the garage, as I always do, parked the car, and entered through the kitchen. The house was strangely silent. Usually, Alice leaves the radio on in the kitchen, always listening to those old jazz songs she likes. But there was no noise. "Alice!" I shouted. No one answered. I walked through the house and heard quiet voices coming from the living room. It was two people talking, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. When I got closer to the living room door, I clearly heard my granddaughter Piper's voice. "Grandma, you shouldn't be doing this to Grandpa. He's a good person." My blood ran cold. What was happening? What was this conversation about? I got a little closer and heard Alice's voice, but in a tone I had never heard from her before. A cold, annoyed tone. "Piper, you're a child. You don't understand adult things, and you shouldn't be messing with my laptop." "But I saw the messages, Grandma. I saw the emails you're sending to him. I saw the plans you have." "Plans? What plans? What messages? What emails?" Alice's voice became even harsher. "Listen closely, kid. You didn't see anything, understand? And you're not going to say anything to anyone, especially your grandfather." "But Grandma?" "No, but Grandma. Do you want your family destroyed? Do you want to see your grandfather suffer? Then you keep quiet and forget what you saw." I was trembling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That was not the voice of the Alice I knew. It was the voice of a completely different person, cold, calculating. Piper said something softly that I couldn't catch. Then I heard footsteps approaching the door where I was. I quickly hid behind the dining room cabinet. I saw my granddaughter leave the living room with tears in her eyes. She walked past where I was without seeing me and went straight to the kitchen. I heard the back door slam shut. I stood there, not knowing what to do. My heart was pounding erratically. What had happened there? What was that conversation about? What messages and emails had Piper seen on Alice's laptop? After a few minutes, I heard Alice making noise in the kitchen, moving pots, as if nothing had happened. I took a deep breath and entered the living room, pretending everything was normal. "Hi, my love. I'm home." She came to greet me with her usual smile. "Hello, darling. How was the doctor?" All good? The doctor says I'm excellent for my age. That's great. I saw Piper a little while ago. She came to ask if you were back. A lie. I had heard the entire conversation. She hadn't come to ask anything about me. And did she stay? No, she said she had to go home to do homework. Another lie. The child had left crying, clearly distraught by something. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about the conversation I had heard, trying to understand what was going on. Alice slept peacefully next to me, as if nothing had happened. The next day, I looked for an opportunity to talk to Piper alone. When she arrived from school, I called her to the study. Piper, I need to talk to you. She turned pale. About what, Grandpa? About yesterday. About the conversation you had with your grandmother. She started to cry. Grandpa, I can't talk. She said if I tell anyone, she'll destroy our family. Piper, listen to your grandfather. It doesn't matter what she said. I need to know the truth. What did you see on her laptop? She looked around as if afraid someone would overhear and whispered, Grandpa, Grandma has been setting you up for months. I saw the emails with Derek, her business partner. They're planning to make it look like you orchestrated the investment fraud. The world crashed down on me. I sat down in my office chair and pulled Piper close to me. My 13-year-old granddaughter was trembling, her eyes red from crying. The afternoon sun streamed through the study window, illuminating this brave child who was carrying a gigantic weight on her small shoulders. Piper, calm down, honey. Take a deep breath and tell your grandpa everything. Who is this Derek? And what fraud? She wiped her tears with her sleeve, looking around as if afraid someone might appear. Grandpa, there's a man she emails every day. They talk all the time. I figured it out because one day she left her laptop on the kitchen counter and it kept pinging with notifications. My heart was racing. What kind of emails, Piper? Emails about money, Grandpa. Things a person who is supposed to be losing money wouldn't say. He calls her his financial queen, and she calls him her partner in crime. But there's something worse, Grandpa. Worse how? She tells him you are her fall guy, and they talk about making you the scapegoat for the missing $5 million in the investment scheme. She said if you take the legal blame, she can keep the house and the insurance money. I felt my blood pressure rising. My chest tightened as if someone had sat on my heart. 44 years of marriage. 44 years believing a lie, building a life on a false foundation. Do you know who this Derek is, Piper? My granddaughter sadly nodded. I do, Grandpa. It's Derek Hayes, the developer. The one whose fund Grandma Alice has been pushing. You know him. Yes, I knew him very well. Derek Hayes, a man in his late 50s, a seemingly respected real estate developer whose investment fund Alice constantly promoted. I had even given him a good reference to a city council member once. I never would have imagined that behind that respectable face was a scoundrel colluding with my wife to ruin me. Piper, how long have you known all this? She sighed deeply, as if tired of carrying this secret. For about 6 months, Grandpa. At first, I didn't understand. I thought it was just business friendship, that she was trying to get our money back. But then the messages got more specific. They started talking about the SEC investigation. She wrote that she had created a paper trail that pointed all the blame to your retirement accounts. And you didn't tell anyone? Your mom, your dad? Grandpa, I'm a kid. Who would believe me against Grandma? Everyone thinks she's a saintly real estate executive. And besides, I was afraid of destroying the family, of making you suffer, of ending everything we had built. I hugged my granddaughter tight. This 13-year-old child had been carrying a terrible burden for 6 months, trying to protect her family alone, suffering in silence so as not to hurt the grandfather she loved so much. Piper, you did right not to tell earlier, but now your grandpa needs to know everything. I need to understand the size of this betrayal. Can you still access her files? Yes, Grandpa. She uses the same password for everything. $10, $1981. The date of your wedding. The date of your marriage to me, I finished. She thinks she's very smart, but I noticed her typing it in once. What a cruel irony. She used the date of our wedding to protect the conversations with her partner in crime. Can you show me those files? She hesitated, looking into my eyes. Grandpa, are you sure? It's going to be very painful. A lot. I'm sure, honey. I need to see it with my own eyes. I need to know the whole truth, no matter how much it hurts. Piper took out her own tablet. I took screenshots of some emails and transcribed some conversations, Grandpa. The worst ones, because I was afraid she would realize I knew the password and change it or delete everything. She handed me the device with trembling hands. I started looking at the files she had taken from Alice's laptop. A completely new world opened up before me. A world of lies, betrayal, and falsehood that I never could have imagined existing inside my own home. The first file I saw was dated the day before, exactly when I was at the doctor. Derek. Financial Queen, I'm desperate to get this last transfer done. The SEC is closing in. Alice. My darling, just stick to the plan. David goes to the doctor tomorrow. He will be out for about 3 hours. I need you to finalize the fake wire transfer documentation that makes it look like it came from his pension account. We need to frame him for the missing $5 million before the divorce case closes. Derek. And you'll be safe? Alice. I will be the betrayed wife who lost everything but her good name. David, the retired chief, will be the high-profile scapegoat. I'll get the insurance money and the house, and we'll live happily ever after. Every word was a stab in my heart. The fall guy. That was how she referred to me to her partner. The man who built her life brick by brick, who gave her everything, who worked like a dog for decades to give comfort and security to the family. The man who loved her more than his own life. I kept reading, my hands shaking. The next conversation was from a week earlier. Alice. Derek, darling, have you thought seriously about our future? When can we really be together without this life of hiding? Derek. Every day, my love. Every single day, I think about it. But do you have the courage to leave everything? The house, the financial security, the life you built? Alice. Honey, I've thought about it 1,000 times. The best thing for us would be for David to naturally take the blame and go to jail. That way I would be a victim with the right to the house, his pension, and his portion of the firm's equity. We could live very well with all that cash. Well over $1 million in combined assets. Derek. Go to jail? But he's not sick, is he? He still looks tough. Alice, Ma. No, the fool is healthy as a horse. He gets checkups every year, takes care of himself. But you know how it is, right? We can give nature a little help by ensuring the forged documents are convincing and pointing directly at him. I put the tablet down and ran to the bathroom. I threw up everything in my stomach. Piper came after me, worried, trying to help. Grandpa, are you okay? Do you want me to call someone? Piper, they are framing me. That's why I was so afraid to tell you, Grandpa. There are much worse messages still. They talk about the details. They talk about how to do it, when to do it. We went back to the study. With my hands shaking so much that I could barely hold the device, I grabbed the tablet again and continued looking at the files. With every conversation, the disgust and desperation increased. Alice. Derek found something important. David has almost $300,000 in his individual retirement account. Money he saved his whole life without spending on nonsense. Plus the value of the house, which must be worth about $600,000. Plus his share of the security firm, which is worth at least another $500,000. It must total almost $1.4 million. Derek. Wow, I didn't imagine he had so much money saved. I thought he was just living off his pension. Alice. The man worked 40 years like an animal, without taking vacations, without spending an extra dime. At least all that saving will serve a useful purpose, for us to be happy. Finally. Derek. And his children? Won't they suspect if their dad suddenly goes to jail? Won't they fight the inheritance? Alice. The children adore me. They think I'm the perfect mom, the dedicated wife. They would never imagine I would be capable of harming their father. And besides, they'll be very busy taking care of me, consoling the poor little widow who was betrayed by her crooked husband. Derek. And have you thought about how to do it? It has to be something that leaves no trace, that looks genuinely like a white-collar crime. Alice. I thought about several options. We can change the security permissions on his bank accounts, or mix something in the evidence that makes him look guilty in the investigation, or even plant documents that link him to shell companies. Derek. And how long would we have to wait after the event to publicly assume our partnership? Alice. A year of grieving is enough. After that, no one will find it strange if I restart my life. I'm still a beautiful woman with assets. I'll be highly sought after. Derek. And where are we going to live? Alice. In his house, of course. It's a big house, well located, and it was bought with the sweat of an idiot who worked his whole life to give us comfort. There was more, much more conversation detailing every step of the macabre plan. Discussions about how much time to wait after my conviction to assume the relationship publicly. Specific plans on how they were going to spend my money. Trips across the country, house renovations, buying a better car. One particularly painful conversation was this. Derek. Sometimes I feel a little guilty, Alice. David was always polite to me when we met in the street. He never treated me badly. Alice. Guilty of what, darling? Do you think I'm happy with that uncultured, ignorant chief? I spent my whole life putting up with a man without culture, without education, without class. The only good thing he gave me were the children and that financial security that will guarantee our future. Derek. But you always seemed like a happy couple when I saw you in public. He treats you with affection. Alice. I'm a good actress, my love. I learned to fake love for him a long time ago. But deep down, I always knew I deserved something better. I deserved a man like you, cultured, educated, who knows how to treat a real woman. Derek. And you never felt anything for him? Not even at the beginning? Alice. At first, I thought I felt something. But it was just the illusion of a young girl. Over time, I realized he was too limited for me. Without ambition, without big dreams, content with a mediocre life in a small city. Derek. At least he gave you stability. Alice. Yes, and he was useful. But now that I'm in my prime, I want to take advantage of what's left of my life besides someone who really deserves me. Someone like you. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. There was the definitive proof that my whole life had been a lie. That the woman I loved, that I adored, that I thought was an angel on earth, was actually a cold, calculating demon. Piper, exactly how long have you been collecting this evidence? Since I figured out the password, Grandpa, about 6 months. I always took screenshots of the most important conversations and saved them on my tablet in a hidden folder. I knew that one day this evidence would be needed for something important. Why didn't you show them to me before? Why did you wait so long? Because I wanted to be absolutely sure, Grandpa. And also because I was very scared. Afraid of ending our family, of causing a tragedy, of seeing you suffer. But yesterday, when she really threatened me, I decided I couldn't stay quiet anymore. How exactly was that threat? She realized I sometimes check her laptop. She told me that if I told anyone anything, especially you, she would invent that I was lying, that I was a troubled child, that I was making up stories. She said she would make the whole family believe I'm crazy, disturbed. That woman's coldness had no limits. It wasn't enough for her to be planning my ruin. She was still threatening an innocent 13-year-old child, my own granddaughter. Piper, you were very brave and very smart too. A 13-year-old child managed to gather evidence that not even a professional detective would have obtained. These files are going to save your grandpa's life. We spent another hour in the study, looking at all the evidence my granddaughter had collected. There were dozens of compromising conversations, internal documents, detailed plans for financial fraud, discussions about the inheritance, a complete file of betrayal and malice. That night, I went back home and pretended everything was normal. I had dinner with Alice. We watched the news together. We talked about nonsense, the weather, the plans for the weekend, the visit Marcia was going to make on Sunday. She was particularly affectionate, kissing me on the cheek, stroking my head, asking if I wanted her to prepare my favorite hot cider. But now I knew that everything was pretense. 44 years of pretense perfectly executed. David, you're a little quiet today, a little distant. Did something happen at work? Did someone bother you? No, darling. I'm just a little tired. It was a heavy day at the firm. My poor old man. Come here and I'll give you a nice massage on your sore back. She gave me the massage as she always had for decades. Affectionate hands, smooth and precise movements, finding exactly the spots where I felt the most pain. But now, as I felt those hands on my skin, I wondered, wasn't she imagining other hands, other touches? And worse, wasn't she thinking about how easy it would be to slip a document into my files that would incriminate me perfectly? The next day, very early, before going to the firm, I looked for a lawyer, Mr. Thompson, a respected professional here in Austin who had an office downtown. He had been recommended by my own son Robert when a neighbor of ours needed to resolve an inheritance matter. I arrived there at 7:30 in the morning as soon as the office opened. The secretary was just arriving, but he received me because he saw that I was desperate. Mr. Miller, are you okay? Did something serious happen? I showed him all the evidence Piper had collected. I sat there in the leather armchair of his office and unleashed 6 months of anguish, painful discoveries, and a betrayal that went far beyond mere financial misconduct. Mr. Thompson was appalled as he looked at the files of the conversations. Mr. Miller, in 30 years as a lawyer, handling the most diverse cases, I have never seen a situation like this. Your wife has not only committed adultery and egregious fraud, but she is planning to use the legal system to blame you for a $5 million crime. This evidence is sufficient not only for a total divorce in your favor, but also for serious criminal prosecution. Mr. Thompson, I just want to be free of her. I don't want revenge. I just want to get out of this situation alive and with my dignity. I understand perfectly, and that is a very noble attitude on your part. We are going to immediately file the divorce petition based on fault. With this evidence, she will leave with the right to absolutely nothing. The house stays yours, the pension is safe, your share of the firm remains untouched. And can my granddaughter get into trouble for having taken those files? On the contrary, she literally saved your life, and that evidence was obtained legally. The files were on her own company laptop, and she had access to the home. Legally, everything is correct. I left there feeling relieved. I finally had a plan, legal protection, but I knew Alice wouldn't accept it passively. The summons arrived 3 days later. I was at the firm when Robert called me, worried. "Dad, Mom is here at the house crying hysterically, saying you filed for divorce out of the blue, that you're going senile and inventing things. What is happening?" "Son, come to the office right now. Bring Piper with you. You need to know the truth." Half an hour later, Robert arrived with his daughter and Claudia, my daughter-in-law. I showed them all the evidence. Robert turned pale. Claudia started to cry, and Piper clung to me. "Dad, I can't believe it. How is my mother capable of something like this?" "Son, I didn't want to believe it either. But there is the evidence, and Piper knew this for 6 months. My granddaughter carried this burden alone." Claudia hugged the child. "Piper, why didn't you tell us?" "Mom, I was afraid of destroying the family, of no one believing me." Robert was furious. "Dad, I'm going to talk to her right now. I'm going to confront her with this evidence." "No, Robert, let the lawyer handle it. She might panic and try to do something crazy." But Alice didn't wait for the hearing to confront me. That same day, she showed up at the firm. She arrived like a hurricane, yelling in front of all the employees. "David, what is this divorce story? Have you gone crazy? Have you lost your mind?" I motioned for the employees to leave and closed the door. It was time to remove the masks permanently. "Alice, we both know very well why I'm asking for a divorce. You don't need to put on a show. I don't know anything. You're inventing things in your head, you old fool. 44 years of marriage to end like this." "I'm not inventing anything. I know about Derek. I know about the emails. I know about the plans you have to frame me for a $5 million fraud." Her face immediately changed. The mask of the indignant wife completely fell. Her look became cold, calculating, full of hatred. "And so what if you know? Do you think you deserve a woman like me? An ignorant chief who can barely sign his name correctly? I was that ignorant chief who worked 40 years like an animal to give you everything you wanted in life. You gave me nothing. You gave me a mediocre life in a small town with no future. I could have married much better men than you, real men. Then why didn't you? Because you were useful at the time. You had professional prospects. You were hardworking. You provided financial security. But now that you're old and useless, I want something better for the rest of my life." There was the naked truth. I had never been loved by her. I had merely been a long-term investment, a useful man to build a solid economic base, while she waited for the opportunity to find something better. And the plans to frame me, Alice? Was that also because I was useless? She laughed. She laughed in my face with a coldness that gave me chills. "Ah, you discovered that too? What a shame. It was going to be much easier and more practical for everyone. For you too, going to prison on a white-collar crime is easier than living a life of pain and suffering." The coldness of that answer confirmed that I was dealing with a dangerous, unscrupulous person, capable of anything. How did you manage to fake love for me for 44 years? It wasn't difficult. You were always very easy to deceive. A simple man, content with little. It was enough to make a nice coffee, a massage on the back, and you melted with gratitude. And what is your plan now? Now I'm going to fight for my rights. This house is mine too. That pension is mine too. I helped build that firm. I'm not leaving here empty-handed just because you discovered my conversations. Your conversations where you planned my ruin. Prove it. Where is the evidence? Do you have a recording? Do you have a witness? You have nothing. It's your word against mine. At that moment, I knew she had no idea that Piper had photographed everything and recorded their conversations, and I decided not to reveal it. It was going to be a surprise for the hearing. Alice, you can leave my firm and my life. I'm leaving, yes, but you're going to regret crossing me. You don't know who you're dealing with. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning at the Austin courthouse. I was nervous but confident in the evidence. Mr. Thompson had guided me through everything. He explained how the procedure would go. Alice arrived accompanied by an expensive lawyer, Mr. Marcio Bueno, known in the city for winning difficult cases. She was fully dressed in black, with a perfect performance as a betrayed and wronged wife. When the Judge Carlos Eduardo Santos, opened the hearing, her lawyer began the spectacle. Your Honor, my client is the victim of a terrible injustice. After 44 years of total dedication to her husband and family, after building an exemplary life by his side, she is now being accused of infidelity and financial crimes without any proof. The plaintiff is clearly going through problems related to advanced age, imagining situations that do not exist. Alice wept profusely. Your Honor, I never betrayed my husband. I never disrespected our marriage. I was always a dedicated wife, an exemplary mother. I don't know why he's doing this to me. The judge looked at me suspiciously. It was obvious that he was inclined to believe her version. A woman of almost 70 years crying with the appearance of a victim against a man who was making serious accusations without presenting proof. My lawyer began to argue, but the atmosphere was heavy until he said, Your Honor, I would like to present the evidence we have. What evidence? Her confident lawyer asked. It was then that Mr. Thompson started showing the files, one by one. The judge was stunned. Alice's lawyer fell silent, and she turned white as a sheet. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson said, these documents clearly show not only financial fraud, but also the planning of a criminal plot to blame Mr. Miller for the theft of $5 million. The judge carefully analyzed each file. Then he looked at Alice. Do you recognize these conversations, Mrs. Miller? She tried to deny it. That must be a montage. Someone invented that. Ma'am, these are screenshots from your own company laptop with your account details and your profile picture. It was then that something happened that no one expected. Piper, who was sitting behind me with Robert and Claudia, raised her hand. Your Honor, may I say something? Everyone turned. The judge frowned. Young lady, this is an adult hearing. I know, sir, but I have something important that you need to know and that my grandfather doesn't know I have. I looked at my granddaughter, confused. Alice turned even whiter. The judge thought for a moment. All right, young lady, you can speak. Piper stood up, took her tablet out of her bag. Your Honor, my grandmother thinks I'm just a silly kid who doesn't understand anything. But I know how to use technology better than she does. And in the last 6 months, besides taking screenshots of the documents, I also recorded some conversations. The silence in the room was absolute. I secretly recorded when she talked on the phone with him, when they discussed the plans in our house. I have everything here." Alice jumped up, desperate. "That's illegal. A child can't do that. She's lying." The judge hammered the gavel. "Silence, young lady. Can you play those recordings?" Piper connected her tablet to the courtroom sound system, and then Alice's voice, clear as crystal, began to play. "Alice. Derek, darling, I know exactly how we're going to do it. The audit is next week. I'll make sure the security permissions on David's old account are switched off, and I'll plant the documents that prove he authorized the wire transfers to your shell company. Everything will point to him." Derek's voice responding. "Are you sure it's going to work? And if someone suspects?" Alice. "No one will suspect. An old man who handles his finances poorly is a normal thing. Robert will even feel sorry for me, for the poor mother who was betrayed by her crooked husband." The judge stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Alice was crying, but now not out of pretense. It was real desperation. That child destroyed my life." Piper, at 13, looked at her with a firmness that moved me. "No, Grandma. You destroyed yourself. I just showed everyone who you really are." Judge Carlos Eduardo took a deep breath, as if he needed a moment to process everything he had just heard and seen. "In 30 years of magistracy, I have never seen a case of such coldness and cruelty. Mrs. Miller not only betrayed her husband systematically, but planned to ruin him in ways that border on the criminal." Alice tried to speak, but he continued. "The divorce is granted with the exclusive fault of the defendant. Mr. Miller keeps 100% of the house and all the couple's assets. Mrs. Miller leaves only with her personal effects. And I am immediately forwarding these recordings to the district attorney's office to investigate possible fraud and criminal conspiracy." She collapsed right there in the middle of the courtroom. I didn't get up to help her. I felt no pity. Alice was investigated by the district attorney. Although she wasn't convicted for criminal conspiracy due to lack of direct physical evidence beyond the recordings, her name was stained throughout the city. Everyone in Austin learned the story. Derek, her partner, was exposed in the local newspapers. His family hasn't spoken to him to this day. She tried to go back to Derek, even after all the scandal, but he no longer wanted anything to do with her. "Alice, you were going to ruin an innocent man for money. Who guarantees me that you wouldn't do the same to me when you got tired of me?" That was what he replied when she showed up at his door. Today she is living in a small apartment in downtown Austin. Alone, without money, without family. Her own children, Robert and Marcia, cut off relations. "Mom, how could you plan my dad's financial ruin? How could you fake love for him for so many years?" That was what Robert told her in their last conversation. Sometimes she walks past my house, slowly, looking around. When I see her, I close the curtain. I no longer feel anger. I feel pity. Pity for a person who wasted an entire life pretending to be who she was not. Today I am 67 years old, and I live in my house, the house I built with my own hands, brick by brick. My granddaughter Piper comes to visit every weekend. We play games together. She teaches me about modern technology. She helps me use my tablet. The other day she asked me, "Grandpa, do you regret discovering the truth?" I replied, "Honey, I spent 44 years being deceived, living a lie. But in these last few months, I have lived more truth and peace than in all the years before." She smiled. "You deserve to be happy, Grandpa. And you know what? She's right." At 67, I learned that sometimes the person who protects you the most in life is not who you expect. It can be a 13-year-old child with a tablet and more than enough courage to save the life of the grandfather she loves. I also discovered that it is never too late to start over. That living a lie, no matter how comfortable it seems, is not life. That the truth hurts, but it liberates. And that true love does not need to pretend, does not need to lie, does not need to plot malice. Today, I wake up every day thanking God for having a brave granddaughter who risked everything to save me, and thanking Him for having discovered in time who the woman I shared half my life with really was. The most devastating betrayals often come from those closest to us, hidden under a veneer of domestic comfort and familiarity. However, the presence of deceit, no matter how carefully constructed, is never a sign that you must accept silence. Like young Piper, we must understand that sometimes the most powerful weapon against a calculating lie is not brute force, but carefully collected evidence and the courage to speak up, regardless of the age or status of the person doing the revealing. Discovering the truth, no matter how painful, is not the end of your life. It is the courageous beginning of your liberation, proving that it is never too late to start anew and trust the genuine, brave people who truly love you.